It's been a great privilege working with you on this project. As you know, I mean, as someone who is passionate about poetry, I am myself a poet, but also someone who's researched poetry and is very well aware of the great riches we have in the archive here in the University of Leeds. It's been a great privilege to watch you take up this opportunity of delving into that archive and making really good use of it. So how would you describe the difference of that experience to more general experience of your undergraduate studies?
I think the biggest thing for me is that when I found out that I got the scholarship and I knew that I was going to be working with you on archival materials, I felt very privileged, and I was very excited and exhilarated at being given the opportunity. But in the initial stages, I felt that this was going to be quite a challenge, in that I've never worked with archival resources before, and I just saw this big sort of sprawling catalogue. And I remember that I was thinking about when I was going to look at John Silkin, and I said, "Can I just look at the John Silkin things, please?" And they said, "Actually, it's 26 linear metres of material." And I felt quite daunted by it. But the great thing about working with you on it is that you've given me a lot of guidance and a lot of opportunities to help me to refine my own topic, and actually to make sense of these very diverse materials, and being able to find my own path in looking at it, and in a measure of independence that I didn't really have at, especially during my first year, which is when I took up the project. I didn't have that independence before, and that's been the major difference between looking at modular materials and then engaging in the archives and carving my own exciting research project from it.
Could you say a little bit more about how you selected the particular topic that you did?
Well, when I was looking through the materials, I came across a little poetry magazine called Poetry and Audience, and it was established in 1953. It's at the very beginning of the range of the archive, which spans from 1953 to 1980. And I was intrigued to see that actually this little poetry magazine was set up by undergraduates and is still running today, 60 years old.
That's one of the longest running.
Yes, exactly. And the most important thing for me is that I became interested in the production of poetry by people who are in my shoes, but 50 to 60 years ago, and that looking at how student poetry was on the same page as professional poets intrigued both my interests in history as a joint honours student and English.
Yeah.
And that's when I sort of knew that looking into the production of poetry by undergraduates in the institution in which I was studying was fascinating, and seeing how that developed over time, and I focused in on the 1953 to 1970 period, is what was the most attractive thing about the project.
Here you're actually meeting with these individuals at another time of their life. I just wonder how you found that, and also, I suppose I'm thinking, what you've learned from that as a research activity. Could you say a little about that?
So the most important thing that I actually learned by interviewing these individuals is to reflect on what it was actually like to be a student, and the production of poetry, and where it actually fitted in their own culture. And in a way, interviewing and listening to their experiences has made me reflect quite a lot on what it means to be a student now. And by reflecting on their reflections, as it were, it's actually made me reevaluate what it actually means to study contemporary English literature, and that it isn't about being secluded in archives poring over manuscripts materials, but these are real living experiences that happened, that are part of my institution's history, and that are actually still applicable in many ways to student life today. And so it's been that process of interviewing and gaining their experiences and working with them to try and get quality information from them, and making sense of it, but also recording their experiences as well. So not only evaluating and doing the critical analysis, but actually in a way recording their histories and contributing to the very archives that I've been studying. And so it's been the cyclical process of learning from those individuals, evaluating what they're saying, but also recording it with an acute awareness that then this information, the product of my research, can then be recorded for posterity, but also so people can use it in the future. And that research isn't just about this reading and then taking from, but actually contributing to future research in very much a cyclical fashion. And I think that is something that I've really learned from the project. I think one of the most important things that I've gained from doing the research is, not only being able to deal with vast quantities of information and diverse quantities of information, so not just your primary and secondary reading, which is valuable in itself, but also the performative aspect of the research has been something that I haven't really had any experience of. So being able to conduct and research interviews with various individuals, adapting and thinking on the spot to get the best information from them has been really important. But so performative in that respect, but also performative in understanding that in a research intensive culture, it's not only about doing the research, but about disseminating it in an accessible manner to various diverse audiences. And so, as part of the research that I've been doing, I've had to talk about it to other scholars like myself, other students, members of specialist bodies such as the Royal Society for Arts, to big groups, to one-on-one with various alumni. And so being able to talk about your research in an accessible, enthusiastic and interesting way, and bringing the research to life and seeing how it's relevant and getting people enthusiastic about it has been very important as well. And this is something that I wouldn't necessarily have experienced in my undergraduate modules.